The fabric of Universe 6 did not tear. It simply ceased to be dense enough to hold the weight pressing against it. There was no sound of thunder, no crackle of lightning, only a sudden, suffocating weight that brought the planet of the god of destruction, Champa, to a standstill. The purple sky turned a hue of ancient, burnished gold, a color older than the stars, older than the angels, older than the concept of destruction itself. Champa, usually loud and brash, found his voice caught in a throat suddenly dry as desert sand. Beside him, Vados, the angel whose composure was written into the laws of reality, ceased her tapping staff. Her eyes, usually calm and knowing, widened in a genuine, primal terror that no mortal had ever witnessed. From the golden rift in the zenith, a pressure descended. It was not Ki. It was not Hakai. It was the heavy, rhythmic breathing of the source code of reality. A single eye, vast as a galaxy and slit with a pupil of infinite darkness, peered through the dimensional veil. It did not look at the god of destruction. It did not look at the angel. It looked through them, scanning the atoms of the universe, searching for a specific vibration, a specific soul. He is not here. A voice resonated, not spoken, but vibrated into the marrow of their bones. The rift closed, the pressure vanished. Champa fell to his knees, gasping for air that felt too thin, while Vados stared at the empty sky, her hands trembling. The creator of the Super Dragon Balls, the dragon god Zalama, was moving, and for the first time in eons, the multiverse felt small. Before the heavens collapse under the weight of this search, and the Grand Priest sounds the final bell, anchor your spirit to this timeline. Subscribe and ignite the notification bell. Witness the journey where a creator seeks his creation, before the history of the Saiyans is rewritten into silence. The palace of the Omni King exists outside the flow of time, suspended in a jelly of white nothingness where the concept of history is merely a toy to be played with. Usually, this realm is filled with the innocent, terrifying laughter of the Xenos, drifting like wind chimes over the silence of the void. But today, the laughter had stopped. The silence that replaced it was not peaceful. It was the held breath of a cosmos waiting for the executioner's blade to fall. Daishinkan, the Grand Priest, stood before the floating dais of the Omni-Kings. His hands, usually clasped behind his back in a posture of absolute, unshakable servitude, were now pressed against the cool surface of a divining orb. The blue halo that typically radiated from his small frame flickered, betraying a disturbance in his internal energy that no mortal had ever witnessed. For the first time in eons, the father of all angels felt a chill crawl up a spine that was supposed to be made of immutable law. Grand Priest. The voices of the two Xenos chirped in unison, their childish tones cutting through the tension like a knife through silk. Why is the floor shaking? Is it a game? Daishinkan turned, his violet eyes wide, devoid of their usual polite warmth. He did not smile. He could not. "No, my lords," he whispered, his voice barely carrying over the hum of the void. "This is not a game. It is a return." Far below the Divine Palace, scattered across the vast expanse of Universe 6 and Universe 7, a phenomenon was occurring that defied the magical physics of the Dragon Balls. Usually, when a wish is granted, the great orbs scatter, turning to stone to recharge their magical density. But they had not scattered. In the deep void between galaxies, the Super Dragon Ball's planet-sized spheres of orange-amber had simply gone dark. The stars within them, usually burning with the captured fire of galaxies, had extinguished. They had turned to gray, dead rock, heavy and inert, floating like corpses in the vacuum. They had not been used. Their power had been recalled. In the sanctum of Universe 7, on the lush green world of the god of destruction, Beerus woke from a nap not with a yawn, but with a gasp. He bolted upright, sweat beading on his purple brow, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Beside him, we ceased his humming. The angel's staff, which served as a window to the multiverse, began to crackle with static, a sound like tearing paper. "Whis," Beerus croaked, his voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and an ancient instinctual fear he hadn't felt since before he took the mantle of destroyer. "What is that pressure? It feels Old! It feels heavier than Zeno. Whis did not answer immediately. He stared into the orb of his staff, watching lines of golden light fracture across the display. The angel's face, always a mask of playful detachment, hardened into a grimace of profound concentration. "It is the architect, my lord," Whis said, his voice devoid of its usual lilt. "Zalama has left the divine layer. He has entered the material plane." Beerus stared at him, the blood draining from his face. "Zalama? The dragon god?" "He is a myth, a concept. He doesn't walk. He is walking now," Whis replied, looking up at the sky where the stars were beginning to dim, as if bowing their heads. "And he is not walking aimlessly. He is hunting." The sensation spread across the multiverse like a shockwave through water. In Universe 11, the stoic angel Margarita felt her knees buckle. In Universe 2, the joyous Sour halted his dance mid-step. The network of angels, usually connected by a web of telepathic serenity, was suddenly flooded with a singular, overwhelming signal of distress. It was a broadcast from the Grand Priest himself, a psychic command that rang in their skulls with the force of a gavel strike. "Do not engage. Do not observe directly. Do not attempt to intercept. The creator of the systems is passing through. Make way, or be unwritten." It was not a warning of war. It was a warning of nature. One does not fight a tsunami. One moves, or one drowns. And moving through the membrane of Universe 6, tearing the dimensional walls apart with the casual ease of a man parting curtains, was a presence that made the gods of destruction feel like children playing with matches. Zalama had arrived. He did not take the form of the golden dragon that Shenron mimicked. That was his avatar, his shadow. In this lower plane, to conserve the integrity of reality, he compressed his infinite mass into a humanoid shape, a figure draped in robes of shifting starlight, with skin the color of burnished gold and eyes that held no pupils, only the swirling depth of a singularity. He did not fly. Space bent around him, carrying him forward. He passed a star system in Universe 6, and the star flared and died. Its energy simply absorbed into his wake to fuel his movement. He did not notice. He was focused on a scent, a spiritual residue that tasted of defiance, of broken limits, of a mortal will that dared to rival the gods. He was not looking for a god of destruction. He was not looking for an angel. He was looking for the creature that had shaken the world of void during the Tournament of Power. He was looking for the heat that had briefly burned brighter than the suns he created. "Grand Priest," the future Zeno whispered, floating slightly closer to his counterpart, seeking comfort in their shared confusion. "He is scary. Why is he scary?" "We are the kings of all." Daishinkan lowered his head, not in reverence to the Xenos, but in a heavy acceptance of a truth he had hoped would remain buried in the ancient eras. He turned to the small, colorful rulers of the multiverse, his expression somber. "You are indeed the kings," Daishinkan said softly, his voice echoing in the infinite white hall. "You possess the power to erase. You are the ultimate editors of this reality. But he is the architect. We manage the building, he laid the foundation. We can scrub the walls clean, my lords, but he owns the stone." The Grand Priest waved his hand, and a holographic projection materialized in the center of the void. It displayed the boundary between Universe 6 and Universe 7, a swirling vortex of neutral energy that acted as a cosmic buffer zone. Usually, this zone was impenetrable to all but the angels and the Supreme Kais using their teleportation cubes. It was a law of physics designed to keep the universes from bleeding into one another, but on the screen, the law was breaking. Zalama did not use a transport cube. He did not manipulate time to skip the distance. He simply walked. Each step he took upon the vacuum created a spiderweb of fractures in the fabric of space-time. The neutral zone, unable to comprehend his density, shattered like thin glass under a heavy boot. Shards of dimensional light rained down into the abyss as the dragon god crossed the border. He was a golden comet of silence, moving with a terrifying, methodical slowness. Look at his trajectory. Whist's voice came through the staff, tinny and distant, laced with a rare panic. The projection shifted to show the path of the dragon god. He was ignoring the god of destruction's planet. He was ignoring the sacred world of the Kais. He was bypassing the bureaucratic centers of the universe entirely. He is heading for the North Galaxy, Daishin-kan observed, his eyes narrowing as he tracked the movement. He is tracking a specific harmonic resonance. It is faint, but to him, it must scream like a siren. The assembly of gods, watching from their respective universes through their angel staffs, held their collective breath. Why the North Galaxy? It was a backwater, a region of little cosmic significance, known mostly for its troublesome mortals and the nuisance of Frieza's empire. What is he looking for? Belmod, the god of destruction of Universe 11, asked, his voice trembling through the communication link. Has a taboo been committed? Did someone try to create artificial Dragon Balls again? No, Daishin-kan replied, his gaze fixed on the golden figure moving across the star maps. He is not looking for an object. He is looking for a soul. The Grand Priest tapped the hologram, zooming in on the sector of space that housed the Earth. But Zalama did not stop at Earth. He paused, his head tilting slightly, the galaxy-spanning eyes squinting as if trying to recall a memory that wasn't his. Then, he adjusted his course. He turned away from Earth and began to move toward a sector of space that was largely empty, a graveyard of debris and stardust. He is going to the coordinates of Old Namek. Shin, the supreme Kai of Universe 7, realized aloud, his hands clutching his Potara earrings. But there is nothing there. That planet was destroyed decades ago. It is just dust and asteroids now. It is not the planet he seeks, Daishin-kan said, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow. It is the event. He is tracing the origin point. The Grand Priest looked up at the Xenos, his violet eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and awe. He is hunting the moment the logic of our world broke. He is going to the place where the first Super Saiyan screamed. He is looking for Son Goku. The name hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Son Goku, a mortal, a Saiyan who liked to fight, who ate too much, who shook the hand of Xeno with a smile. To the gods, he was a fascinating anomaly, a pet that had learned to perform incredible tricks. But to Zalama, to the architect of the Dragon Balls, why would the indifference of the cosmos care about a monkey? Why? Champa's voice cracked over the link. Why, Goku? Is he going to erase him? Daishin-kan watched the golden figure of Zalama arrive at the debris field of Old Namek, the dragon god's presence, illuminating the dark asteroids with a holy, terrifying light. I do not think he wants to erase him, Lord Champa, Daishin-kan whispered, a tremor finally entering his hands. If he wanted Goku dead, the Saiyan would have simply ceased to exist yesterday. No, this is worse. He is curious. Curiosity. The word floated in the void, alien and uncomfortable. To the gods of destruction, curiosity was a dangerous flaw, a trait belonging to mortals who did not know their place. Gods did not wonder. They knew. They acted. They judged. But for the architect of all things to be curious suggested something terrifying. It suggested that there was something in his own creation that he did not recognize. When a gardener finds a weed, he pulls it, Daishin-kan said, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a prayer. But when he finds a flower he did not plant, a flower that grows in soil where nothing should survive, he does not cut it. He studies it. He asks how. The Grand Priest turned his back to the holograms, his silhouette small against the blinding white of the infinite. Zalama has realized that the Saiyan, Son Goku, is an equation that does not balance, and until he solves it, the laws of our multiverse are suspended. He raised his staff, and the connection to the 12 universes began to fade. The panic on the faces of the gods of destruction, Champa's sweating brow, Belmod's painted frown, Beerus' paralyzed stare dissolved into static. Return to your posts, Daishin-kan commanded, though it sounded less like an order and more like a plea. Do not interfere. Do not pray. Just watch. If the dragon god finds the answer he seeks, we may wake up in a different reality tomorrow. If he does not, we may not wake up at all. The holograms vanished. The world of void returned to its absolute, suffocating silence. The future Xeno tugged on the Grand Priest's sleeve. Nay, Daishinkan, the Child King asked, his eyes wide. Is Goku in trouble? Daishinkan looked down, a rare, unreadable sorrow crossing his ageless features. No, my lord. Trouble is a mortal concept. Goku has become something else entirely. He has become a question. Space is not empty. To the mortal eye, the vacuum between stars is a void, a nothingness where life cannot exist. But to the eyes of a god, space is a canvas, thick with the paint of history. Every punch thrown, every beam fired, every scream of rage leaves a ripple in the ether, a scar on the skin of the cosmos that never truly heals. Zalama stood in the graveyard of old Namek. There was no planet here anymore. There was only a drifting field of asteroids, clouds of frozen gas, and the shattered remains of a world that had died decades ago. The silence was absolute, a cold so deep it would shatter steel. But Zalama did not feel the cold. He stood on a chunk of rock the size of a mountain, his golden robes unmoving in the vacuum, his presence radiating a light that made the surrounding asteroids glow like embers. He closed his single, galaxy-spanning eye, and the physical world fell away. He was no longer seeing the rocks. He was seeing the memory of the place. He rewound the vibrations of the area. The silence was replaced by the phantom roar of a dying planet. Magma bubbled up from the past. Lightning, green and chaotic, tore through the psychic sky. And there, amidst the apocalyptic memory, stood the ghosts of the past. Zalama watched the spectral projection of Frieza, a tiny, white and purple tyrant, overflowing with a malice so petty it made the dragon god's lip curl in distaste. Frieza was predictable. He was a standard villain, a glitch of ego that occurred in every universe. He was boring. But then, Zalama's gaze shifted. He looked at the other figure, the Saiyan. He saw the base form of Son Goku, shirt torn, body broken, spirit exhausted. He saw the moment the bald human, Krillin, was detonated into dust. He felt the spike in the emotional spectrum of the universe, a sudden, violent spike of pure loss. Zalama leaned forward, his physical hand reaching out to touch the ghost of the past. Here, the dragon god thought, his mind vibrating against the fabric of reality. This is the anomaly. By all laws of biology and spirit, Goku should have broken. His power reserves were empty. His body was failing. Fear and grief should have crushed him. But instead, something impossible happened. The energy did not come from his body. It came from his need. Zalama watched the golden aura erupt around the Saiyan. It was not just a transformation. It was a rewriting of the rules. The universe had said, "You are not strong enough." And Goku had screamed back, "I am." And the universe, terrified of his rage, had obeyed him. He did not ask a dragon, Zalama murmured, his voice carrying through the vacuum without air. He did not use the Super Dragon Balls. He did not pray to a god. Zalama watched the ghost of the Super Saiyan gaze down at Frieza with teal eyes that held the cold fury of a storm. He made a wish. Zalama realized the truth settling into his core. With his own soul, he forced reality to grant him a wish for power. He became his own dragon. The realization was intoxicating. The Super Dragon Balls were created to grant any wish, no matter how impossible. But here was a mortal who had bypassed the mechanism, who had accessed the source code of miracles through sheer, blinding rage. Zalama opened his eye. The ghosts faded. The debris field returned to silence, but the trail was fresh now. He had tasted the flavor of Goku's soul, a flavor of breaking limits, of impossibility. But this was only the beginning. This was the infant scream of a god in the making. Zalama turned his head, his gaze piercing through the light years, locking onto the coordinates of Universe 11. He needed to see the evolution. He needed to see the moment the mortal touched the domain of the angels. He needed to speak to the one who had watched Goku shatter his shell completely. He needed to speak to Jiren. The memory of Namek faded, dissolving into the cold starlight, but Zalama did not move. He had found the root. The first fracture in the glass ceiling of mortality, but a single instance of defiance does not make a legend. A single miracle can be an accident. A pattern of miracles is a heresy against the natural order. The dragon god took a step, and the scenery of the universe blurred around him. He was walking through the timeline now, skimming the surface of the years like a stone skipped across a pond. He sought the next spike, the next moment where this son Goku had defied the parameters of his creation. He stopped in a realm that smelled of pink smoke and absolute chaos. The sacred world of the Kais. Zalama looked up. In the spectral memory of the past, he saw the Saiyan again. But he was different. The golden hair had lengthened, cascading down his back like a mane of liquid sun. The brow was heavy, primal, devoid of eyebrows, a visage that looked more beast than man. "Super Saiyan 3, Zalama observed, tasting the energy in the air. To a martial artist, the form was impressive. To the architect, it was a disaster. He watched Goku burn through his own life force to sustain the transformation. It was inefficient. It was a leaking engine, screaming noise and heat, bleeding time itself just to exist. The laws of physics were rejecting it, trying to push the Saiyan back into his base form, but Goku held it together with nothing but grit. "He forces the door open," Zalama whispered, watching the ghostly Goku grapple with the chaotic entity known as Majin Buu. "He does not have the key, so he breaks the lock. It is crude, it is ugly." But then, the dragon god saw the smile. Even as his energy drained, even as the universe groaned under the strain of his wasteful form, Goku was smiling. He was enjoying the strain. He was finding joy in the breaking of his own limits. "He loves the wall," Zalama murmured, a flicker of genuine confusion rippling through his golden aura. "He does not seek power to rule. He seeks power to see what lies beyond the next barrier." The scene shifted again. The crude roaring of Super Saiyan 3 vanished, replaced by a sensation that was far more familiar to the dragon god. It was a sensation that made the scales beneath his robes hum in resonance. God Ki. Zalama stood in the stratosphere of Earth, watching the memory of the Battle of Gods. He saw the red aura envelop the Saiyans slimmer, calmer, more refined. He saw Goku clash with Beerus, the shockwaves of their fists threatening to unravel the tapestry of the macrocosm. Zalama remembered this day. He had felt it in his deep slumber, a itch in the fabric of reality. At the time, he had assumed Beerus was fighting a rogue angel. But now, seeing the truth, the dragon god felt a chill. He did not steal divinity, Zalama said, watching the red fire in Goku's eyes. He was given it, and then he made it his own. Most mortals who touch God Ki are consumed by it. Their souls burn out like moths in a bonfire. But Goku had absorbed it. He had woven the divine frequency into his biology. He had bridged the gap between the created and the creator, not with magic, but with instinct. Zalama turned away from the memory of the Red God. The forensic analysis was complete. He understood the what. Goku was a biological singularity, a creature that adapted to whatever pressure was placed upon him. But the what was no longer enough. Zalama needed the why. And to understand the why, he needed to see the pinnacle. He needed to investigate the moment where Goku had stopped being a Super Saiyan and had started moving like an angel. He needed to go to the Null Realm. Zalama's form began to dissolve, turning into a streak of golden light that bypassed the need for travel. He was finished with the past. The ghosts of Namek and the echoes of the Buu saga were merely footprints. He wanted to see the man who had forced the Saiyan to take the final step. The dragon god reappeared in the vast emptiness between universes, facing the direction of Universe 11. Across the cosmos, the pressure of his movement was getting worse. Stars in Universe 7 were dimming, conserving their energy, as if afraid to shine too brightly in his presence. The Kais were prostrate on their holy worlds, praying for the great shadow to pass. But Zalama's mind was focused on a singular entity. In the hierarchy of mortals, there was a name that was whispered with fear even by the gods of destruction. Jiren the Grey, the mortal who was stronger than his own god. A being of absolute solitude, absolute strength, and absolute conviction. If Goku was the unstoppable force, Jiren was the immovable object. It was their collision that had cracked the shell of the Saiyans' potential and allowed the silver light of Ultra Instinct to pour through. Jiren, Zalama's voice vibrated through the vacuum, traveling light years in an instant. You were the anvil upon which he was forged. You felt the weight of his soul when it shed its skin. Zalama did not care about Jiren's strength. Strength was relative. Compared to Zalama, Jiren was a dust mite. But Jiren was a witness. He had looked into the eyes of the silver dragon and survived. The dragon god raised a hand, and the fabric of space in front of him tore open, revealing the fiery red sky of a planet in Universe 11. He could feel the key signature of the Grey Trooper. It was calm, deep, and tremendously dense, like a neutron star sitting on the surface of a planet. "Tell me, warrior," Zalama whispered to the portal, preparing to step through. "Did you feel fear when the mortal stopped thinking and started existing? Did you feel the gaze of the angels looking back at you?" With a sound like a thunderclap that shattered windows across 3 galaxies, Zalama stepped into Universe 11. The hunt for the past was over. The interrogation of the present was about to begin. In the stark, red wastelands of the planet Netphis, silence was not a lack of noise. It was a discipline. Here, amidst the jagged spires of crimson rock that scraped the belly of the sky, Jiren the Grey sat in the lotus position. He was floating inches above the ground, a monolith of muscle and will. Around him, the air shimmered with a heat that was not physical, but spiritual, a barrier of absolute strength that repelled dust, wind, and weakness. Topo, the god of destruction and training, and Dispo, the sonic warrior, stood at a respectful distance. They watched their brother-in-arms with a reverence that bordered on worship. Jiren was their wall. He was the unshakable pillar of Universe 11. He has been deeper in meditation than usual. Topo rumbled, his massive arms crossed, his mustache twitching slightly in the arid breeze. Ever since the tournament, ever since Son Goku, he is refining his spirit, Dispo replied, his ears flicking. He will never be caught off guard again. Next time, not even the Silver Saiyan will. Dispo stopped. He didn't stop speaking because he wanted to. He stopped because the air in his lungs suddenly turned into lead. The red sky of Netphis did not darken. It did not storm. Instead, the color simply drained away. The vibrant crimson turned to a muted sepia tone, as if the planet itself was aging 1 billion years in a single second. The wind died. The hum of the planet's core went silent. Jiren's eyes snapped open. For the first time since the Tournament of Power, the eyes of the strongest mortal widened in genuine shock. The barrier of strength he projected, the wall that had stopped attacks from gods, collapsed instantly, not because it was struck, but because it was irrelevant. A pressure descended from the zenith. It was gentle, terrifyingly gentle, like the hand of a parent placing a blanket over a sleeping child, except the blanket was the weight of a galaxy. "Do not move," a voice vibrated. It did not come from the sky. It came from the blood in their veins. Topo fell. The candidate for God of Destruction, who possessed the power of Hakai, dropped to his knees, his Hakai energy fizzling out like a wet match. Dispo was pinned flat against the rock, his speed rendered meaningless when time itself seemed to be thick as syrup. Only Jiren remained upright. But he was not standing. He was frozen, his levitation broken, his boots planted on the ground as if gravity had increased 1,000-fold. He stared up at the rift opening in the atmosphere. He saw the gold. Zalama descended. He did not land. The ground simply rose to meet his feet, eager to support him. The dragon god stood 10 paces from Jiren. The golden robes flowed around him, untouched by the dust of the wasteland. The single, vertical slit of his eye focused on the Grey Trooper. Jiren tried to summon his ki. He tried to ignite the fiery red aura that had shaken the world of void. He pushed with every ounce of his trauma, his training, his absolute conviction. Nothing happened. It was not that his power was blocked. It was that, in the presence of the architect, power was a concept that had not been approved. Jiren was a drawing, trying to fight the eraser. "You!" Zalama said. The word hit Jiren in the chest, harder than Goku's fist ever had. Zalama walked forward, the sound of his footsteps echoing like gongs in a temple. He stopped mere inches from Jiren, towering over the mortal. "I do not require your strength, Jiren of the Pride Troopers," Zalama whispered, his voice sounding like shifting tectonic plates. "I require your memory." Jiren's eyes, usually narrow pools of unwavering darkness, twitched. For a warrior whose entire philosophy was built on the axiom that strength is absolute, this moment was a spiritual dismantling. He was strong, stronger than anyone in his universe, stronger than the gods who ruled him. Yet, standing before this golden figure, his strength felt like a child's drawing of a sword held up against a nuclear storm. It wasn't that he was weak. It was that the metric of strength no longer applied. "You look at me," Zalama observed, his voice devoid of mockery, stating it as a cold fact. "And you tried to calculate the energy required to defeat me. That is your flaw, Jiren. You believe everything is a wall to be broken, but you cannot break the sky. You can only exist beneath it." The dragon god raised a hand, his fingers long and tipped with starlight. He did not touch Jiren. He simply pointed a finger at the Pride Trooper's forehead. "Show me the silver dragon," Zalama commanded. It wasn't a request. Jiren felt his mind split open. The mental barriers he had erected over centuries of meditation walls built to keep out trauma, fear, and the screams of his murdered village were bypassed effortlessly. Zalama didn't break them. He simply walked through them as if they were mist. The red landscape of Netfis dissolved. Both god and mortal were plunged into a psychic reconstruction of the world of void. The arena was shattered. The air smelled of ozone and desperation. And there, standing on a pillar of rock, was the memory of Son Goku. But seen through Jiren's memory, this was not the heroic figure the audience saw. This was a monster. Zalama watched the scene play out through Jiren's emotional lens. He felt the terror Jiren had suppressed. When Goku's hair had turned silver, Jiren hadn't just seen a power-up. He had seen a void. He was empty. Jiren's voice echoed in the vision, sounding small, stripped of its usual bravado. He stopped being Son Goku. There was no anger, no desire to win, no ego. He was pure reaction. Zalama studied the silver-eyed avatar of Goku in the vision. He watched as the Saiyan moved. It was the technique of the angel's ultra instinct. But on a mortal body, it looked different. It was violent, jagged, raw. An angel flows like water. Goku crashed like a tsunami. He stole the movement of the gods. Zalama whispered, entranced by the blasphemy of it. The Grand Priest teaches this state as the ultimate serenity. But this Saiyan, he used it as a weapon. He filled the emptiness with heat. In the vision, Goku struck Jiren. Zalama felt the phantom impact. It wasn't just a physical blow. It was a rejection of Jiren's logic. Jiren believed strength came from solitude, from the consolidation of self. Goku's fist screamed that strength came from breaking the self, from shattering the vessel to let the light pour out. "You lost," Zalama said to the frozen Jiren in the vision. "Not because you lacked power, but because you were fighting a ghost! You cannot hit what is not there!" The vision swirled. The silver light faded, replaced by the flickering of a dying flame. Zalama saw the toll it took. He saw Goku's body break under the pressure of the divine technique, blood bursting from his skin as the mortal shell rejected the god-tier software. "This is it," Zalama murmured, his eye narrowing. "The paradox. His soul is infinite, but his body is finite. He is a fire that consumes its own hearth." The memory ended. Reality snapped back into place. The red winds of Netfis howled again. Jiren fell forward, catching himself on his hands, gasping for air, sweat pooling on the rock beneath him. He felt violated, his deepest moment of failure dissected by a being who treated it like a biology experiment. Zalama lowered his hand. The golden light around him pulsed, satisfied. "You have served your purpose, Grey One," the dragon god said, turning his back on the strongest mortal. "You were the hammer that cracked the egg. Without your absolute pressure, he would have remained a simple martial artist. You should be proud. You helped create a heresy." Jiren looked up. his grit returning as the suffocating pressure eased slightly. Is he dead? Jiren rasped, the question burning in his throat. The Saiyan. Has he finally burned himself out? Zalama paused. He looked up at the stars of Universe 11, which were slowly returning to their normal brightness. Dead. Zalama repeated the word as if tasting it. No. Death is a transition for mortals. Goku has not transitioned. He is missing. The dragon god looked back at Jiren, his expression unreadable. I have searched the past. I have searched the memory of his rivals. I have traced his timeline from the moment he fell from the sky in a pod to the moment he shook the heavens in the void. And yet, he is not in the present. Zalama's gaze shifted, looking beyond the physical universe, looking at the unseen cracks in the dimensional walls. He pushed too hard, Zalama said, his voice dropping to a subsonic rumble that shook the ground. During his last training, he did not just break a limit, he broke the anchor. He has drifted. Toppo and Dispo, finally able to move as the pressure lifted, rushed to Jiren's side, helping their leader stand. They looked at the golden intruder with terror, but Jiren pushed them aside. He stood on his own feet, watching the architect. Drifted where? Jiren asked. To the place where time does not flow, Zalama replied. The place where broken timelines go to rot. The null realm is not enough to hold him. He has slipped into the cracks of the time nest itself. Zalama began to rise, gravity releasing its hold on him. The golden rift in the sky opened again, revealing the swirling, chaotic colors of the interdimensional superhighway. The physical search is over, Zalama declared, his voice echoing across the planet. I must go to the one place even the angels hesitate to tread. I must go to the custodians of history. He looked down at Jiren one last time. Train, Jiren. If I find him, and if I bring him back, he will be something that your philosophy cannot explain. You will need more than strength to survive what he is becoming. With a flash of light that blinded the Pride Troopers, Zalama vanished. The pressure was gone. The sky turned red again. The wind returned. But Jiren stood frozen, staring at the empty spot where the god had stood. For the first time in his life, the silence of his mind was filled with noise. It was the sound of a question he couldn't answer. What lies beyond strength? Far away, in a realm made of gears, scrolls, and infinite clockwork, a different kind of panic was beginning. The supreme Kai of time, Cronoa, was watching her scrolls burn. Zalama was coming to the time nest. The time nest does not exist on a map. It sits at the end of eternity, a sanctuary woven from the threads of causality. Here, the sky is a ticking clock faced the size of a solar system, and the ground is paved with the solidified moments of history. It is a library of existence, guarded by the supreme Kai of time, Cronoa, and her elite patrol. Usually, the time nest smells of old parchment and tea. Today, it smelled of ozone and terror. Trunks, seal the vault! Cronoa screamed, her voice shrill, losing all its usual bubbly composure. She stood before the massive iron-bound doors of the scroll vault, her hands glowing with temporal magic. Trunks, the seasoned warrior who had sliced through tyrants and androids, drew his sword. His hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed him. He could feel it. The entire realm was vibrating. The giant gears that floated in the sky, mechanisms that regulated the flow of centuries, were groaning, their teeth grinding against a friction that shouldn't exist. Supreme Kai! Trunks shouted over the noise of the buckling reality. What is coming? Is it Demigra? Is it a demon god? Worse! Cronoa cried out, adding another layer of seals to the door. It's the source! It's the ink! Trunks didn't have time to ask what she meant. The sky above them didn't tear open. It simply changed. The ticking clock face vanished, replaced by a single golden eye that looked down upon the time nest like a human looking into a fishbowl. The pressure hit instantly. Toki Toki, the ancient bird of time, squawked in panic and buried its head under its wing. Trunks fell to one knee, his sword clattering to the stone floor. It wasn't gravity. It was authority. His body recognized that it was in the presence of something that predated the concept of fighting. Zalama manifested. He did not walk through a portal. He simply condensed out of the golden light, standing in the center of the plaza. The gears in the sky stopped turning. Time, in the home of time, stood still. Cronoa dropped her hands. The magical seals she had erected shattered like sugar glass. She looked up at the towering golden figure, her mouth agape. She was a Kai, a goddess. But standing before Zalama, she looked like a librarian caught by the CEO of the publishing house. Lord Zalama, she whispered, sinking into a deep, trembling bow. Trunks struggled to lift his head. Zalama? The name was a myth, the creator of the Super Dragon Balls. Why was a cosmic abstract standing in the courtyard? Zalama ignored Trunks. He'd barely acknowledged Cronoa. His attention was fixed on the vault doors. "Open it," Zalama said. His voice did not echo. It settled into the stone, heavy and permanent. Cronoa flinched. "My lord, the laws of the time nest. No one is permitted to view the raw timelines without." "I am not no one," Zalama interrupted. He did not raise his voice. He didn't have to. "And I did not come to discuss laws. I came to read." He raised a hand. The iron doors, forged to withstand the erasure of universes, groaned. The metal twisted, turning to liquid, and flowed away like water. The vault lay open. Zalama stepped forward, passing the kneeling Trunks. As he passed, Trunks felt a wave of heat, not fire, but the heat of a star's core. It was the sensation of raw, unrefined creation. "You." Zalama stopped, pausing beside the half-Saiyan. He didn't look down, but his presence focused on Trunks. "You are the anomaly, the mortal who sins against time to save it." Trunks couldn't speak. The air was too thick. "You carry his blood," Zalama murmured. "The blood of the one I seek. But you are dilute. You are mixed with earth. He is becoming pure." Zalama walked into the vault, leaving the guardians of history shivering in the silence of a broken clock. Inside the vault, the universe did not look like stars and planets. It looked like a library of light. Infinite rows of shelves stretched up into a darkness that had no ceiling, each shelf packed with scrolls that hummed with the voices of billions of lives. Some scrolls burned with the bright white light of peace. Others smoldered with the dark, sickly purple of tragedy. Zalama did not browse. He moved with the terrifying certainty of a magnet finding iron. He walked past the scrolls of the Golden Frieza Wars, past the scrolls of the Cell Games, ignoring the screams of history that echoed from the parchment. He stopped in front of a section that felt cold. The scrolls here were tattered, vibrating with a chaotic, paradoxical energy. This was the section of Broken Future's timelines that had been severed, stitched back together, or erased. Zalama reached out and pulled a single scroll from the rack. It was heavy, stained with the psychic residue of despair. It was the chronicle of the Goku Black Arc. He did not read it. He crushed the scroll in his hand, not to destroy it, but to squeeze the essence out of it. The vault dissolved. Zalama stood in the ruin of a city. The sky was a bruised mix of green and gray, choked with smoke. Buildings, once proud monuments of human achievement, were reduced to skeletons of steel and concrete. There was no sound of life, no birds, no traffic, no voices. Only the wind howling through the wreckage. And the laughter. High above a burning skyscraper, a figure floated. He wore black robes, a single earring dangling from his ear. His hair was a majestic, terrifying pink Super Saiyan rosé. Goku Black. Zalama floated up to meet him. The timeline was a recording, a memory of a deleted future, so the entities within it could not see the Dragon God. Zalama circled the figure of Goku Black, studying him like a jeweler inspecting a flawed diamond. "Zamasu," Zalama whispered, recognizing the soul of the rogue Kai inside the body. "You were a fool! You hated mortals! Yet you needed a mortal skin to touch perfection!" He looked closely at the body. It was Goku's body, stolen from a different timeline. Muscles honed by decades of gravity training. Cells evolved through near-death experiences. It was a biological masterpiece. Zalama placed his hand near Goku Black's chest, feeling the heart beating inside. This body, Zalama analyzed, his eyes narrowing. It is a sponge. It does not reject power, it invites it. When the Kai's soul entered, the body did not fight. It adapted. It took the divine essence of Zamasu and twisted the Super Saiyan form into this, Rosé. The dragon god watched as Goku Black formed a scythe of violent ki, tearing a hole in reality itself. Even with a pilot who did not understand the machine, this body was capable of tearing the sky, Zalama noted. Zamasu reached the level of the god simply by wearing this skin. He proved that the Saiyan's biology is not a limit, it is a canvas. The scene shifted. Zalama watched the fusion of Zamasu and Black, a grotesque, weeping god that tried to become the universe itself. He saw the desperation. He saw the moment Zeno erased the timeline. The memory ended. The scroll reformed in Zalama's hand, placing him back in the silence of the time vault. Zalama placed the scroll back on the shelf. The investigation was complete. The body is limitless, Zalama concluded, his voice resonating in the empty library. The mind is the only throttle. Zamasu failed because his mind was rigid. He wanted to be everything, so he collapsed. But Goku did not want to be everything. He wanted to be better. Zalama turned away from the shelves. He looked at the floor of the vault, but he didn't see stone. He saw through the floor, through the foundation of the time nest, gazing into the white nothingness that lay beneath the concept of existence. He is not in the scrolls, Zalama said aloud, because he is no longer writing history. He has stopped the pen. The dragon god walked back toward the entrance. Trunks and Cronoa were still there, frozen in their anxiety. Supreme Kai of Time, Zalama said, stopping at the threshold. Cronoa jumped, her Potara earrings jingling. Yes, Lord Zalama, prepare your archives, he said, looking out into the void of the time nest. You are about to record a new entry. I am going to the white. The white, Cronoa stammered. You mean the null realm? The void between universes. Deeper, Zalama replied. The blank page before the ink is dry. The space where I dream. The white, Trunks repeated, the hilt of his sword slick with sweat in his grip. You mean the nothingness? The erasure. Zalama did not turn back. He stood at the edge of the Time Nest floating plaza, looking out into the swirling, multicolored nebulae of history. Erasure is a function of the kings, he corrected, his voice vibrating in the chest of every living being in the realm. The Xenos erase. They wiped the slate clean. I speak of the space before the slate existed. The dragon god raised both hands. The golden aura that surrounded him flared, turning from a gentle radiance into a blinding, jagged corona. The gears in the sky began to scream. The friction of his power was too much for the dimension that housed time. You believe the multiverse is a room, Zalama intoned. You believe the void is the walls. But outside the walls, there is a foundation. A place where logic has not yet been written. That is where he has gone. Zalama thrust his hands forward, driving his fingers into the empty air. Crack! The sound was not physical. It was the sound of a concept snapping. Trunks clamped his hands over his ears, dropping to his knees as a high-pitched whine pierced his mind. Cronoa screamed, shielding her eyes. In front of Zalama, the air, the very fabric of the time nest tore open, but it didn't reveal the black starry void of space. It didn't reveal the swirling colors of a wormhole. It revealed white, absolute, blinding, suffocating white. It was a color so pure it hurt to look at. It was the absence of depth, the absence of shadow, the absence of time. It was the raw canvas of existence before the first atom was drawn. He is not dead, Zalama said, stepping toward the jagged tear in reality. He has simply shed so much of his mortal weight that he has floated to the surface. He is drifting in the source. The wind from the tear howled, sucking at the loose scrolls, pulling the leaves of the time nest toward the hole. It was a vacuum of reality. Lord Zalama, Cronoa cried out, her voice desperate. If you enter the source, if you interact with a mortal in the white, The feedback could rewrite the laws of physics. You could inadvertently reset the multiverse. Zalama paused, one foot crossing the threshold into the blinding light. He looked back over his shoulder. For the first time, the slit of his eye widened slightly, revealing a glimmer of something that looked dangerously like anticipation. The multiverse is stagnant, Supreme Kai, Zalama rumbled. The gods sleep. The angels wait. The mortals repeat their mistakes. Perhaps a reset is exactly what is required. He stepped through. The tears zipped shut instantly, as if reality was desperate to heal the wound. The blinding white vanished, replaced by the familiar, comforting darkness of the time nest's void. The screaming gears slowed to their rhythmic ticking. The pressure lifted. Trunk stayed on his knees, gasping for breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked at Cronoa, who was staring blankly at the spot where the architect had vanished. "What just happened?" Trunks whispered. Cronoa swallowed hard, her face pale. "The author just stepped into the margin to talk to a character," she murmured. "God help us all! There was no up, there was no down, there was no horizon, no sky, no ground. There was only the white. It was a realm of sensory deprivation so absolute that it felt loud. In this place, a heartbeat would sound like a drum, a breath would sound like a hurricane. It was the null space, the blank page, the canvas of the dragon god. Zalama walked, or perhaps he floated. In a place without distance, movement was a matter of will, not physics. He shed the humanoid disguise he had worn for the mortals. He did not need to be small here. His form expanded. The golden robes dissolved into scales of infinite luster. His body elongated, stretching across the nothingness, becoming a serpentine river of gold that had no beginning and no end. He became the Super Shenron, the omnipotent dragon, vast enough to swallow galaxies. He slithered through the white, his presence filling the void. And then he found the speck. It was tiny, microscopic against the scale of the dragon. A single, solitary dot floating in the endless expanse. Zalama coiled around it, his massive head descending, his red eyes glowing like twin suns. He narrowed his focus, zooming in until the speck took the shape of a man. Son Goku was floating. He was not dead, but he was not awake. He was suspended in a fetal position, drifting in the nothingness. His gi was gone, dissolved by the pressure of the realm. His body was covered in faint, silver scars that glowed with a soft, rhythmic pulse. His hair was black, floating weightlessly, but the tips shimmered with a persistent, unyielding silver light. He was breathing, deep, slow breaths that seemed to pull the white nothingness into his lungs and convert it into energy. Zalama hovered over him, the great dragon's snout inches from the Saiyan's sleeping face. The god could feel the heat radiating off the mortal. It was calm, terrifyingly calm. "You pushed yourself so far past your limits that you fell off the edge of the world," Zalama spoke, his voice not a sound, but a vibration that shook the white. "You ran out of opponents, so you fought the universe itself, and you won. But in winning, you lost your place within it." The dragon god exhaled, a stream of golden creation energy washing over the sleeping Saiyan. "Wake up, son Goku." The command was absolute. It was the voice that told stars to ignite. Goku's eyelids fluttered. He didn't gasp. He didn't jerk awake. He simply opened his eyes. They were not black. They were not teal. They were not the cold silver of the angels. They were gold. Deep, vertical slit gold. Goku looked up at the face of the infinite dragon. He didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He floated there, staring into the eyes of the Creator, and a slow, tired smile crept across his face. "Yo," Goku whispered. His voice was raspy, unused, but it cut through the silence like a bell. "That's a big dragon! Are you supposed to be Shenron?" Zalama recoiled slightly. A mortal, waking in the source, facing the architect, and his first reaction was a casual greeting. "I am Zalama," the dragon thundered. "I am the one who crafted the stars you fly past. I am the one who wrote the rule that allows you to breathe. Goku scratched the back of his head, yawning. He stretched his limbs, his joints popping with the sound of distant thunder. Zalama, huh? Like the Super Dragon Ball guy? Bulma talked about you. Goku drifted upright, crossing his legs in midair. He looked at his own hands, clenching and unclenching his fists. Man, I feel heavy. Where are we? Did I die again? Chi-Chi is gonna be so mad. You are not dead, Zalama answered, his form shrinking, condensing back into the humanoid avatar to speak face to face with the Saiyan. The golden-skinned god stood before Goku. You are in the white. You trained yourself out of reality, Saiyan. You punched a hole in the dimension and fell through. Goku blinked. Oh, that explains why Jiren stopped hitting back. Zalama stared at him. The simplicity of the creature was baffling. But beneath the simplicity, Zalama could see the engine. He could see the spirit that burned with a fuel he couldn't identify. I searched the multiverse for you, son Goku, Zalama said, his tone serious. I scared the gods. I silenced the angels. I broke the time nest. All to ask you one question. Goku tilted his head, his golden eyes curious. A question? You went through all that for a question? You could have just used instant transmission. My question is this. Zalama stepped closer, the pressure of his presence weighing down on Goku. Why do you seek power? You do not want to rule. You do not want to destroy. You do not even want to be a god. You are a paradox. You climb the mountain only to jump off the peak, looking for a higher one. What is it that you want? Goku looked confused. He floated there, rubbing his chin, thinking hard. The silence stretched on. Finally, Goku looked up, his expression innocent, yet holding a wisdom that felt older than the dragon standing before him. I don't want anything, Goku said softly. I just want to know. Know what? I want to know. Goku grinned, his eyes sparkling. If there's a guy out there who can beat me, to see if there is a guy who can beat you. Zalama repeated the words. In the mouth of a god, they sounded small, petty, a waste of a cosmic miracle. But then, the dragon god looked into the eyes of the Saiyan. He looked for arrogance, for the hunger of a conqueror, for the insecurity of a man afraid to be weak. He found none of it. He found only a pure, blinding excitement. It was the look of a child staring at a locked door, not wondering what treasure was inside, but simply wondering if he was strong enough to kick it down. For the first time in the history of existence, Zalama laughed. It was not a vocal sound. It was a tectonic event. The white rippled. The laughter of the architect shattered the silence of the void, creating shock waves that would eventually drift out and become background radiation for newborn universes. You are a fool, Zalama said, his smile widening, revealing teeth that shone like white dwarf stars. You stand before the creator of the systems, the weaver of reality, and you treat me like a tournament bracket entry. Goku grinned back, assuming his fighting stance. It wasn't the stance of the Turtle School, nor the stance of the Angels. It was loose, fluid, formless. Well, can you? Zalama's eyes narrowed. Let us see. The dragon god did not move his body. He moved the space where his body existed. In an instant, he was everywhere. A fist made of solidified gravity slammed into Goku from the left. A kick made of pure kinetic law struck him from the right. Goku vanished. He didn't teleport. There was no pop of instant transmission. In this realm, where time did not exist, speed was irrelevant. Goku simply was not there when the attacks landed. He had instinctively synchronized with the frequency of the white. He reappeared above Zalama, spinning, his leg coming down like a guillotine. Boom! Zalama caught the kick with one hand. The impact created a horizon line in the nothingness, a flat plane of black energy that stretched out to infinity. The shockwave blew Goku's hair back, the silver tips flashing wildly, heavy. Goku strained, pushing against the god's grip. You're really heavy. I am the anchor, Zalama replied calmly, twisting his wrist. Gravity inverted. Goku was flung downward, falling into a bottomless pit of pressure that Zalama created with a thought. The Saiyan screamed, not in pain, but in effort. His body began to glow. The blue aura of Super Saiyan Blue flared, but it was instantly swallowed by the white. Then came the red. Then the golden. The void ate them all. Your transformations are useless here. Zalama's voice boomed from everywhere. They rely on drawing ki from the atmosphere. There is no atmosphere here. There is only me. Goku tumbled through the crushing pressure, his bones creaking. He closed his eyes. He stopped trying to pull energy in. If there's nothing here, Goku thought, a calm silence washing over his panic. Then I just have to be everything. Zalama watched from above as the falling speck stopped. Goku opened his eyes. They were silver, but there was no aura, no giant avatar, no screaming heat. Goku simply stood in the crushing gravity, his body looking distinct, solid, and hyper-real against the white background. He had internalized the transformation. He wasn't leaking power. He was holding it all inside the marrow of his bones. Goku looked up. He punched the empty air. The force of the punch traveled through the vacuum, ignoring distance, and struck Zalama in the chest. The dragon god slid back 1 inch. It was the single most significant inch in history. Zalama looked down at his chest. There was no pain, but there was the memory of impact. A mortal, stripped of nature, stripped of assistance, stripped of the laws of physics, had struck the architect. Magnificent, Zalama whispered. The god descended, shedding his restraint. The two figures clashed in the center of the nothingness. It was a battle of concepts, stagnation against evolution, the eternal against the infinite. Every collision created a spark that drifted away to become a new star in the material plane. They fought for an eternity. They fought for a second. In the white there was no difference. The fist of the Saiyan stopped inches from the face of the god. The palm of the god stopped inches from the chest of the Saiyan. They froze there, suspended in the aftermath of a violence that had birthed 1,000 theoretical galaxies. Goku was panting, his body covered in bruises that healed and reopened in a cycle of rapid evolution. Zalama was breathing heavily, his golden robes torn, his single eye wide with the thrill of exertion. Zalama lowered his hand. That is enough, the architect said. Goku lowered his fist, collapsing out of his stance, his shoulders slumping. Man, he wheezed, wiping blood from his lip. You're tough! I couldn't even make you use your other hand. You struck me, Zalama corrected, his tone solemn. Do not measure victory by the fall of the opponent, Son Goku. Measure it by the height of the mountain you climbed. Zalama reached out. He did not strike. He placed his large hand on Goku's shoulder. The touch was heavy, warm, and ancient. The multiverse is dying, Zalama said softly. Not from destruction, but from boredom. The destroyers sleep. The angels spectate. The Xenos play. There is no growth, no friction. The dragon god looked deep into Goku's soul. I searched for you because I needed to know if a spark still existed. I needed to know if there was still a creature capable of surprising the narrator. Goku laughed, a scratchy, tired sound. I'm not trying to surprise anyone. I just want to get stronger. That is why you are the spark, Zalama replied. You do not seek the end of the path. You love the walking. Zalama stepped back. He raised his hand, and the white began to swirl. A hole tore open in the fabric of the void, a window looking back into the physical world. Through it, Goku could see the purple sky of the world of void, where the Grand Priest was still waiting. Go back, Zalama commanded. Wait, Goku asked, floating toward the rift. Will I see you again? Can we fight again? Zalama smiled a genuine, mysterious smile. I am in every Dragon Ball you gather. I am in every wish you make. But here, in the source? No. You cannot return here until you have surpassed the Grand Priest. Goku's eyes lit up. Is he strong? He is the father of angels, Zalama warned. He does not fight. He ends. Sounds fun, Goku grinned. He turned to the rift. He paused, looking back at the golden deity. Hey, Zalama, thanks for the workout. With a wave, Son Goku dove through the tear in reality. The rift sealed shut. The white returned to its pristine, silent state. Zalama stood alone in the nothingness. He looked at his chest, where the phantom pain of the Saiyan's punch still lingered. The dragon god began to dissolve, returning to his slumber in the deep dimensions. But before he faded, he spoke one last line to the empty cosmos. "Grow, little monkey." The story was getting boring, but I think the next chapter will be worth reading. In the world of Void, the Grand Priest suddenly looked up. The angels, sensing the shift, turned their gazes to the sky. There was no explosion, no grand beam of light, simply a pop. Son Goku appeared in the center of the arena. He was unconscious, falling gently toward the floor. But as he fell, the air around him distorted. Space bent away from him, as if the universe itself was making room for his mass. Vegeta, standing in the spectator stands of the erased timeline, felt it first. He gripped the railing, his knuckles turning white. "Kakarot," Vegeta whispered, a mixture of fury and awe in his voice. "Where the hell have you been?" Dai Shinkan watched the sleeping Saiyan land softly on the stone. The Grand Priest felt a chill, a new sensation. The Saiyan didn't feel like a mortal anymore. He didn't feel like a god of destruction. He felt unlimited. The Grand Priest smiled, a small, dangerous thing. "Welcome back, Son Goku," he whispered to the silence. "It seems the game has changed." The stars burned quietly overhead, as if remembering his will, and in the distance, the Super Dragon Balls began to glow, their stone shells cracking, their light returning brighter than before.